Penetration is psychological. Let me give you a brief story as to what I mean by this whole idea of penetration being psychological. It's New Year's Eve. My core worker slash coworker, she's she's out in the bar scene, right? She's tearing the town. She's out here in celebratory spirits with high heels on, dressed up, in search of some tail, of course, right? I mean, what else would women do late 30s, New Year's Eve, right? If they're not married, if they don't have children. Anyhow, so she, and even if they did, right, what's going to stop them? I mean, we see plenty of worse behavior. But anyhow, I digress. So she's going out. She's going with one of her friends, and she ends up meeting a guy, and then the point is she takes him home to her friend's spot. Fast forward, they're in the closet making out, and she goes downstairs and she's confused as to what is happening. She can't quite feel anything in particular. She's kind of like, oh, whatever. Go back to making out. And then eventually gets to the point where Buddy pulls his pants down, and then she sees exactly what the problem was. Buddy had a micro penis. And the lesson here is, obviously, well, yeah, sadly for him, she declined the offer. And I'm sure he knew it was because of that. Um, you have to understand, I mean, she's never been in a lesbian encounter, and that's the closest thing to a clitoris, right? That you're going to find for a man. So, it wouldn't have counted on her body counts. It wouldn't have been a notch on her body count. So I guess from that perspective, she would have been okay. But I think what rubs a little bit of salt in the wound was that she had a couple anacondas with the doors open, waiting for her to come through, you know, before the new year. But I suppose she declined those offers, which makes it even worse that she took this guy home. But the lesson that this guy needs to understand, and anybody that's not well endowed, is that if you are one of these guys, if you do have basically a clitoris, you essentially are wired for the long term. You're not allowed, nor should you even want to try to do like this hookup thing. It's just you're not a short term guy. You're just not built like that. Your destiny is one where you need to slowly and gradually become something in the mind and the imagination before you even physically do anything. Because the reality is that's why penetration is psychological in regards to that, because you must do everything before then to add imagination or to add inches in the imagination. And then at that point, it's not so drastic. I mean, you've done so much beforehand to make it so that she's into you, she's attracted to you, she'll overlook, you know, the lack of inches. And so a guy like that should have never been doing anything like that. You need to take your time. And in fact, I would even say, dare I say, is preface with that. You meet a girl, you tell her right away, you know what? I hope you know what you're getting yourself into. And then if she's like, well, what is it that I'm getting myself into? Is that, I have a micro penis. Just be aware, and I won't say if I do or not, but there will be signs. And you know what? And go off the bat. And so expectations are microscopic from that point moving forward. If she's not comfortable with it, well, it is what it is. You'll soon see. But it's never been a problem for me because I've always been of the opinion that if you lead with that, you bury that insecurity from the beginning, you don't have any problems moving forward. If anything, it's not an issue at all. And and so I think that's the thing you have to understand is you have to be able to do this slowly. You do this gradual thing, and the way to do that is you become an excellent conversationalist. You're a wordsmith. You really dazzle, right? Because you don't have the facilities to be able to do it in different ways. So you must have wordplay. You must be able to move your tongue in certain ways to make things so that you have an advantage, right? That maybe another guy won't necessarily have to try to get because he's like, I can just pull it out, he can just send a penis pic, right? We don't, if you're in that situation, you don't have the luxury of doing something like that. Um, you know, so so that's the thing. I mean, there's plenty of ways around it. It's not an end all be all. I think most people, if put in a situation like that, would crumble, um, because they don't have the resources or the industriousness to get crafty enough to figure a way to move about, right? To get around that dilemma or disability, if you will. Because like I said, I'm a testament to being able to do it repeatedly, and obviously there's you know certain results that are not always the outcomes you desire, but the point is that you try and you go as far as you can, and it's just a lesson in being able to say, well, this is what this is the lot I was given, these are the cards I was dealt, and what can I do with them? And I think that's the fun part, is like, well, like I said, I can go ahead and lean in with that and say, hey, you know what? FYI, there's nothing to see here. You're not going to feel anything. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? And then the curiosity builds. And they're like, by the time they see it, they're like, well, it's not, it's actually quite large. It's not that small. It's not as small as I thought it was, because expectations are literally microscopic, like I said. So there's nothing for you to lose because you've already led with that, right? Your biggest insecurity has already been, you've been leading with that. But you got to cover all your bases. If you have other things that you haven't resolved, there's going to be other problems, there's going to be other impediments. So that needs to be the one that you need to dial in, right? You need to, like I said, focus on becoming a better version of yourself and not letting that cripple you or handicap you in any way. And so, like I said, for any excuses or for the dude that got dissed on New Year's, obviously that's a difficult pill to swallow. But at the same time, you don't put yourself in a situation like that, because, like I said, I've had plenty of women that you know have, for better or worse, had the pleasure of sleeping with me, and nobody's ever no. I mean, at least not to me specifically. I've never been rejected in that way. I've never been told no. Whilst I was you know, without clothing. That's never happened. So that had never happened before. So I don't know what that's like. Because, like I said, I do everything in my power beforehand to make sure that that's not even going to happen, because I always lead with that. There is no doubts that you will be very disappointed with what you see. and look, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess you could twist it and say, well, you know what? Like, this could be a lesbian encounter. You can enjoy this clitoris. We can play with each other's. And so there's got to be a way. You got to look. There's one of two things you can do. You can either cry or laugh about it. And I choose to laugh about it, because crying is not going to do anything for me. It's just going to make me feel sorry for myself, but it's not going to change the circumstances. I'm dealt with what I've dealt with. It is what it is. And so that is like the best that's like the red pill, right? Which is that, you know, you do what you can with what you have. And ultimately that's all we can hope for. That's all we can wish to be. But anyhow, like I said, penetration is very much psychological. You put it down, you penetrate in the mind and the imagination, and you get really crafty with that. And the physical part is just second nature, a second order effect. At that point, you know, you've already deflowered, whoever it is that you want to be with. You've already dazzled them so much that that's just another step in that direction. So anyhow, I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next one.